Okay, everyone. UConn getting ready to head out to Maui, playing the Maui Invitational. And I figured who better to have on than Kevin Sweeney? You see him in Sports Illustrated Field of 68. He's all over the place with college basketball. He's been on the podcast before. So, Kevin, thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.
So, I guess let's start with this before we dive into Maui. Just give me some early thoughts you got on the college basketball season, 2.5, 3 weeks in here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the most part, every big kind of hyped up game has delivered at a high level, whether it was, the Purdue Alabama game on Friday. Obviously Auburn versus Houston was a banger. Kentucky versus Duke was outstanding. Kansas Carolina. Um, I think I felt like there were enough early season matchups that would make people want to pay attention early on in the college season, and for the most part, those games have delivered, which is awesome as a guy who loves the game. It's awesome for the casual fans who just see, oh, Kansas is playing. Let's see what they're up to this year. So overall, it's been a fun start. Yeah, so obviously the sport is, I think, as deep as it's been in a while. There's more talent back than there's been in a while, and uh, so far it's lived up to the early hype.
Yeah, you talk about big games. The field here at the Maui Invitational is just going to be big game after big game. I mean, this field's loaded for those not familiar with maybe the other side of the bracket too. You obviously got UConn and Memphis, Michigan State, Colorado, Auburn, Iowa State, Dayton, UNC. You excited for this MTE with this field they've got here?
Yeah, I mean, it's as good as it's ever been, I think, in Maui. Obviously, the top especially
Yeah.
is ridiculous with the three top five AP teams, four top 10. Um, the title storyline as UConn tries to push for the three-peat. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better if you were doing this for TV purposes, which is really what they are. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be excited. I'll be in Vegas at the other one of the other main events of the week, the
Yeah.
Players Era tournament, and then Duke Kansas, obviously a huge banger. But TVs will be tuned to Maui as often as it can be.
So I wanted to have you on because I mean you cover this sport at the national level, so familiar with with these teams at such great detail. So starting just with this opening matchup for UConn against Memphis. I know Memphis has had its shares of ups and downs recently. What are your thoughts kind of on this on where this Memphis program is right now heading into this matchup against UConn?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to be really pleased with the start. So much turmoil. I don't think anyone wanted November 4th to come faster than Penny Hardaway just because the offseason has not been a kind place for him. It's been chaotic. It has made his program, quite frankly, look a bit unorganized. But, at the end of the day, their on-court product outside of last year's collapse has been competitive. And, the hope was that they'd bounce back. And so far they have. Road win at UNLV was impressive. Obviously, beating Mizzou opening night. We'll see how good Missouri winds up being. But those are the types of games early on that they needed. They're still a very talented team. They're very athletic, and their guards really live at the rim. PJ Haggerty, who's transferred to Tulsa, the big question was how his game would scale up to the highest level of college basketball, and he's passed those early tests. I mean, he's living at the free throw line. His game is truly a violent college basketball game. He's a very physical driver. He draws a ton of fouls. It'll be an interesting test to see how UConn handles a team that is so intent on getting it to the rim, given the questions in the preseason about the Huskies' interior defense.
Yeah, outside of Haggerty there, who else is Dan Hurley and his staff really focusing on in this matchup? I know they'll see a somewhat familiar face in Dane Danger, who they faced in the Elite Eight game there against Illinois. But who else are some of these other guys fans should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, a lot of these guys are somewhat familiar, at least to UConn. I mean, Tyrese Hunter was at Texas
Yeah.
a year ago. He's their point guard for the Tigers. He's a really good player. Again, just a guy who's been around, been through some wars, is tough, can pass, is a great on-ball defender. They went out and got Colby Rogers, who was at Wichita last year. He's a sharpshooter from beyond the arc. And again, the positional size with up front with Danja, who you mentioned, but also Nick Jourdain, who's back, was at Temple a couple years, and last year was at Memphis, the only returner on this year's group. And then Musa Cisse, who's at one point, a National Defensive Player of the Year type of candidate, and has seen his game sort of regress over the last couple of years, a lot of injuries, but it's had a promising early start. So if it's an old team. I mean, these are pretty much exclusively fourth, fifth, sixth year guys, and that should cause some potential headaches for Hurley and Co.
If UConn is going to do what they've done in the non-conference of late, and that's just run through these non-conference opponents, what's the key for them to beating up on a team like Memphis here?
Um, I think Memphis is a bit turnover prone. I think the level of intensity that UConn plays with could cause some problems there. I think you this is not Memphis. Memphis is a weird team in that their 3-point percentage is really good, but they don't take a lot of threes. Like right now, I think they're shooting something like 48, 49% from three. That's not going to last. Like
Yeah.
they're not a good 3-point shooting team on paper, really outside of Rodgers, who I mentioned earlier. So finding ways to kind of funnel them to the rim and block shots. Again, not having Klingon back there, it's a different world. They
Yeah.
can't do quite what they did defensively, and sort of like an Illinois game plan or something like that, and just rely on Klingon to take everything away. But I think if you're going to win and win big against Memphis, it starts with taking away the rim.
Yeah. As you look at this matchup, do you see Memphis giving UConn a game here?
I think it'll be competitive, especially early. Like I don't think this is a Memphis team that gets blown out of the gym. I also think that they're a group that's already shown they have some toughness and have been willing to battle back in games after early deficits against both UNLV and against Mizzou. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game in the second half. I'm not sure they can ever push it close enough. And I think the thing we've seen when you play UConn is they just keep coming and coming and coming with ways that eventually they're going to kind of deliver that knockout punch. But yeah, I don't think this is a pushover game. I think this is a game that they'll have to battle in. You'll get to learn something about this UConn team in which, quite frankly, is what coaches want, right?
Yeah.
I think Hurley is very happy to play a game like this where he can see his team tested when it's not up 35 with 12 minutes to go.
Exactly. I was going to say this is always like the first game I really get nervous for in the year when you've opened with three or four low major teams and now you actually get to see what this team is really made up against some quality competition here. And I know mentioning those cupcakes that UConn has played before we dive into some of these other teams in Maui. What have been your kind of initial thoughts on this UConn team from what you've seen of them early on here in the season?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think the standard is so high that inevitably you're going to come and say, all right, like what holes can we find? What nitpicks can we do? And
Yeah.
I watched a few minutes of the Lemoyne game in the first half, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't the most impressive thing I've ever seen, or that's just like that's the way it is. But like when you look up at the final score and you see the level of dominance consistently, says something, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy to do. If everyone was doing it, then yeah, I joke about it all the time. People made a big deal last year about Iowa State kind of rigging the net, if you will, beating these teams by a million points against again the East Texas A&Ms of the world, right? That's
Yeah.
what they were. That's who they were playing. They're beating by a million, and their metrics were going up. And people are like, well, it's not so hard to do that. Anyone can do it. And like you look at the box scores, not everyone can do it. Like that, this isn't what happens. Like it's not normal to be beating teams by 35 every night. It's not
Yeah.
normal to do that and then come in and be like, yeah, we didn't play so great. We could have been better. So, again, I think you can find holes in what they've done so far, but I do think you see kind of the stylistic footprint that they've wanted to have, right? Which is that they can really shoot, that they're aggressive on the glass, that they're can be long and athletic on the perimeter and make it hard for you to get downhill. And then when you get downhill, we're going to be able to protect the rim and defend the rim. Again, what does that look like against similarly sized, similarly athletic teams?
Yeah.
That'll be the test this week in Maui. But I think there haven't been any gigantic flashing warning signs from 4 by games so far, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I won't let you say Alex Caravan because I think that's the easy answer here. But outside of him, who kind of impressed you the most on this team, or a guy or two that you're most excited to see play against some tougher competition this week in Maui?
Yeah, I would say solo ball. I knew he would be good, but I mean, even just back to that Rhode Island game in October,
Yeah.
when you're starved for any take to have, and it was like, man, like this guy's a pro, like this guy's really really good, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he handles again a bigger moment, a brighter stage, when he can't be subbed out quickly if things go wrong the way he could a year ago, right? Like that to me
Mhm.
is will be fascinating. See if the shooting sticks at the level it has so far. But I mean, again, if he's going to be a guy with his size and his touch around the basket, his ability to stretch the floor, and his ability to guard people, it's going to be a pretty tough recipe, and he'll step into one of the more valuable roles, not just on this UConn team, but in the Big East.
Looking to add some local flavor to your lineup? Martin Rosel's is the MVP of your game day spread and a slam dunk for any occasion. Proudly made in hard-hit New Britain, their famous kielbasa and hot dogs have been a fan favorite for over 96 years. You can find their products in grocery stores across the state or have them delivered directly to your home court, coast to coast, via martinrosel.com. Take your taste buds to the championship and go support a UConn fan-owned business. So we looked at the two teams here we know, are going to be in that first matchup here, but kind of looking elsewhere, especially at UConn's part of the bracket here, should they beat Memphis, play the winner of Michigan State, Colorado, just give us some initial thoughts on those teams. I know we've seen Michigan State, I'd say, I don't know if struggle is the right word, but they don't look like quite the vintage Michigan State teams you're used to seeing year in and year out.
Yeah, I think Michigan State's certainly finding an identity right now. I don't think this is one of Izzo's more talented teams. I think the hope was, they were building around this sophomore class, which was Jeremy Fears, Xavier Booker, Cohen Carr. All guys were pretty highly rated recruits. I think the hope was we're going to look like a higher level of talent than we have the last couple of years. It
Mhm.
doesn't like that so far. A lot of that is that Booker has not really developed the way they hoped. Fears is limited offensively, and Carr is a guy who can't really shoot. That trio has not maybe lived up to the lofty expectations. Again, they're an Izzo team. They're going to be very tough defensively, very disciplined. They take care of the basketball at a high level. They're not going to beat themselves, but they've not great bigs and a point guard who can't really score it, and they play a four a lot of the time that doesn't really shoot it. So how do you score offensively in a crowded paint like that? It's tough, and that's what they've run into so far. As far as the Colorado side of things, too early to tell. A team that, quite frankly, their NIL situation was probably one of the worst in power conference basketball. So they had to get creative. Went out and got an NAIA All-American and Elijah Malone, a D2 All-American and Trevor Baskin. Those guys have been kind of the nucleus of their team so far. Again, a different weight class when you're playing Eastern Washington and Northern Colorado and Cal State Fullerton than
Yeah.
it is when you're playing UConn and all them. So, interested to see how they handle it, but not a team that I have super, super high expectations for.
Just based on the teams in UConn's part of the bracket, do you see any of these teams giving UConn a real run for their money to make the Maui title game here?
Yeah, look, I think they'll be in a game. They'll be in games. Like this will be the first time that UConn feels any game pressure, which will be interesting to see how they respond to.
Yeah.
But do I like? Would I be? I would be shocked if Memphis beat them. I would be shocked if Michigan State beat them. I would be shocked if Colorado beats them.
Yeah, fair enough. As you look at that other side of the bracket, I mean that side also loaded Auburn, Iowa State, Dayton, UNC. Who do you like out of that side of the bracket as you just kind of look early on there?
Man, I love this Auburn team.
Yeah.
I last year into the tournament, I think a lot of people forget that Auburn was that four seed in UConn's region, and I really felt like if UConn was going to lose in the NCAA tournament, it was
It
going
would
to
have been
lose to
Auburn.
Auburn in the Sweet 16. I was a huge believer in that Auburn team. I actually in my bracket picked Auburn to beat UConn. Shows how smart I am. So hopefully that provided some voodoo motivation for the Huskies
You were on
as
the
to
bulletin board, I'm
want to
sure.
find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's somewhere. But look, I think they're better than they were a year ago. I think their guard plays better. Last year that was really their sticking point was they just didn't have good enough guards. They got a few different guys to kind of fill those roles with Todd Pettiford and Miles Kelly, who've really changed their team, given more shooting. And then Broome is a dominant force. John Broome to me should be the National Player of the Year through 2 weeks. Now, again, you don't win the award in November, but
Yeah.
he has been outstanding and is a great force, really both ways at the rim. Can stretch the floor now. Has improved his shot. So I love this group. Again, the path is brutal. The idea of having to potentially go through Iowa State and North Carolina, two very distinct, different challenges, but if they can get there and have anything left in the tank, that game against UConn would be a heck of a ball game.
I know everyone loved the Auburn UConn, what was it, double overtime matchup in the Bahamas. I think that was 2 or 3 Thanksgivings ago. So gives everyone something to look forward to. Do you think if you look on that other side of the bracket, if UConn was to make the title game, that Auburn would be the toughest opponent for them out of that side?
Tough question. I think probably yes because they're the most complete.
Yeah.
Like, look, I think Iowa State could cause a lot of problems defensively. I remember 2 years ago in Portland, I was at that game when they played to round out the Phil
Getting
Knight
yeah.
showcase. Yeah, and that was like, Iowa State did an incredible job defensively. They just didn't have the offense. I do think they're better offensively now. Their guard play is pretty good. Keyshawn Gilbert has been a huge piece for them in his year two transfer. Obviously, Lipsy back. Um, but yeah, I just don't know that in a game like that they can score with UConn. I do think Auburn can.
Yeah.
Uh, Auburn scored almost 50 points and a half against Houston. You do that, you can score against anybody. So
Yeah,
that's a
for
good sign
sure.
for me.
All right. Wrapping just the Maui talk. Who's your pick here?
I think UConn just because the road's easier. I do think that Auburn is as good, if not better than UConn right now. I don't know that I'll believe that in March, but I think Auburn is playing better right now to me than anyone in the country.
Mhm.
But just the path is so much more difficult. I like UConn to get to the title game, and I think they probably find a way to do it. And again, they've been awesome in these early season events under Hurley, and I expect that to continue.
All right. Well, while I've got you, I just got to quickly do a little early season Big East talk with you. I know the league's had its ups and downs so far to start the season. What are your thoughts on the league?
Yeah, it has been a great start. The last couple of days, maybe the last week or so, have been more promising. Marquette beating Purdue. I was at that game on
Yeah.
Tuesday night. That was, one of those type of early statement wins you got to have. I like the way that their group has evolved. They're defending better with Chase Ross out there all the time, and obviously Cam Jones has been phenomenal. I think he's a guy who can be in the National Player of the Year conversation.
Mhm.
Impressed with St. John's defensively. Still kind of finding their identity on the offensive end, but you're just not going to score on them in the half court. I think that's the real concerning thing. Is I just don't know how you're going to guard them, or how you're going to score on them. Excuse me. Middle and bottom is I think where the concerns lie. Obviously, the Villanova talk has been overwhelming. I don't need to
Yeah.
belabor the point. I think everybody
Yeah.
knows where things stand. But I think you hope that Georgetown would look better. I think you hope that Seton Hall would be more competitive early on. Providence does not look great. I do think they'll look better once Bryce is back. I'm not sure how quickly that happens.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey,
so
but DePaul's looking a little better at least, right?
DePaul looks great. Like I saw them their third game against Mercer, and I was like, yeah, this should be a battle. Like Mercer's not bad. Like we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden it's like 52-20, and you're like, oh yeah, like it's DePaul. Like I'm sure it'll kind of come back to earth, and then the next game it's blow them out again, and next game out it's blow them out. Like
Yeah.
they they look like a competent basketball team. Their point guard play is really good with Connor Enright. They shoot the three. They know who they are. Like they have a clear identity of what they want to do.
Mhm.
And that as much as anything, I mean, especially for these 12, 13 transfer rosters, like that's
Yeah.
like it's really, really hard to find that quickly. And so I give Holtman a ton of credit for I think part of it's how he built it and built it cohesively, but then getting everybody to buy in early on has been big. I'm not ready to make any grand proclamations that they're going to be in the tournament or anything like that, but they will be good enough to at least potentially catch you by surprise when you
Yeah.
play them in Chicago, and that's a great step in the right direction for where it was.
For sure, I know it. I know that the league needs DePaul and those bottom teams to step it up a little bit. So nice to see it. They're starting to do their part there. I'll wrap with this one for you. Once UConn gets back to Maui, things don't slow down. I mean, they've got a game against Maryland Eastern Shore, but after that, they have Baylor at home. They go to Texas. They've got Gonzaga at MSG before they start Big East play at home against Xavier. Of those three kind of marquee opponents, Gonzaga, Texas, Baylor, which one do you think gives them the biggest challenge as you look at things there?
Gonzaga. I thought last year the main thing that separated UConn from Gonzaga was like athletically. I didn't think
Mhm.
Gonzaga had the horses. I do think they do now. Went out and got Khalif Battle and Michael Ajayi in the portal. Those were huge additions. Just gives them a little different look, a little different edge. They're so skilled offensively. They can beat you in so many ways. Like I've always felt that the teams that are best built to win in March have different guys who could step up on different nights.
Yeah.
And I feel like Gonzaga kind of has that has that mojo this year with 6 or 7 guys they really trust. Again, it'll be a huge challenge for them coming into New York City, and obviously an arena that UConn fans like to take over.
Yeah.
But Gonzaga and Auburn to me have been the two best teams in the country through 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it's been at this point. And so I wouldn't be rushing to bet against them, even against a team as good as UConn.
No, for sure. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you hopping on, previewing Maui in these final early season non-conference games for UConn. So enjoy the feast week here. It's, you said you're going out to Vegas, so enjoy Vegas and the action out there. And thanks so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back on later on in the season.
Yeah, Vegas in Thanksgiving week is an interesting scene. Excited to be there, but I appreciate you guys having me as always.
Anytime. We'll see you.